Hey everybody, Johnny K here. Today we're going to be critiquing your work. We got a lot of images submitted from photographers from all over the map, all over the US, and anything from a very basic novice to a professional. And so today we're going to be looking at a few professional images from Sylvia Spiro. But before we do, make sure you go in and subscribe to Master Photography Now and hit that bell icon so you'll be notified every time we have a new video. Also, please share the channel so we can keep growing it, and I can keep making these videos for you guys to learn more. We'll do it together. Like the video, and please put a comment with your thoughts on the images and anything you think that you would have done differently. Also, please send in your images for critique to john@kemmerling.com, and we'll do them right here together on the channel. So with that, let's get right into it. So this first image is a really interesting shot. He almost looks like the Mad Hatter, and he's playing this giant cello, or whatever you call this device. He's going at it, isn't he? So I like it. Very interesting subject, interesting story. Makes me want to see the book that it's in, or what story she's trying to tell. There are a few things that stand out to me. One of them compositionally would be, and since this person is a professional photographer, I'm going to be a little more picky than I would with an amateur. So don't be afraid. Don't be afraid if you're an amateur. Go ahead and send in your pictures. I'm not going to tear you apart. But with our pros, I'm gonna be real picky because that's what would happen to them in a print competition. So the first thing that stands out to me is it's right here where the cello is going off. So this leading line here, it's leading you out of the image. You want people to come in and look at the image with the center of interest and stay and not be taken off. And so for that reason, this is a little too close to the edge for me. This is chopped off, and so is the shoe. Now I see this down here. Let me see if I can get... let me turn this bad boy on. There you go. So right here, this shoe, and here, I wish they weren't cut off as well. I understand that this might not have looked as interesting, but that could have been some easy Photoshop work for some more grass just to make it look pretty. This log down here, or excuse me, this board that they're using to prop up the chair, I just don't feel like we need it, and that wouldn't be that hard to take out. So this is leading us off. This is dangerously close. I just kind of wish it was more in the frame. But let's get back to the composition in a minute. Let's work on the exposure a little. So let me just go to the basic controls, and I'm going to drop the highlights because this to me is way too bright, and so is this. It just looks overexposed. So I'm going to drop all the highlights down. And then to compensate in his face, we'll go ahead and lighten the shadows just so you get a little more detail there. Okay, and then we can take a brush and we can go in and we can darken the areas that we want to darken. And we'll just start out really heavy so you can see what we're doing. And then we'll go ahead and lighten those highlights until they're not obnoxiously gray, and you can even warm them up a little bit so it looks more natural. And we'll add a little magenta. There we go, that looks better. So as far as the composition again, I'm wondering, I don't know if she had access, but I almost wish this cool castle, which is intentionally in the image here, I almost wish he could be closer. So you could get that camera right on the ground looking straight up at this guy with the castle in the background. It would have been cool if they could have been closer and have this more prominently featured behind him rather than the concrete, which isn't as pretty. And then maybe you wouldn't have had to use the board down here. But there are certain things that I would do. I would probably also darken this area here. I would darken this pole and all this area just to kind of keep us up in the image that is most important and cool. So the last thing is I would go down to this, and I do this a lot, especially for composition when things aren't, we'll call it perfect compositionally. what we'll do is we'll go in and we'll add a vignette. And the vignette is just going to bring us back in to the center of the image. And it doesn't have to be that dark, but we can bring it in a little more and then lighten it up a little bit like that. And so that looks quite a bit better, right? And then since this image is so funky and crazy, I would actually also want to change the vibrance. I want to make it really vibrant. It's crazy out here. Look at that. Is that cool? I like that a lot. So let's go back and let's look at the original. So this is the way it was submitted. And then here's just with a few tweaks. A couple other little things that I just want to mention briefly. So if you zoom in, things like this thing on his foot, I'll just show you really quick. I would just kind of get rid of weird, distracting, or things that look dirty, just so that looks a little better. You could even clean up the heel of his shoe. And one other thing I noticed when zooming in, if you look, his face is perfectly sharp, and I think that's vitally important for a shot like this. But the cello is not. It's actually out of focus. Looks like he even broke part of his string. That's pretty cool, actually. But I really wish, I don't see the exposure settings that she used, but it's a wide angle lens and his face is in focus and this is not. So I assume she was shooting wide open. I would have shot this at like f11, f16 and just got everything crystal clear. Even if you wanted to blur the background again later, you could do that, but it would be nice to see all of this perfectly sharp. But his face is, so good job. Sylvia, great shot. Thank you for sharing so much. Let's take a look at the next one. Very cool, very interesting. Makes me wonder what the story is here. Let's zoom in, take a look. Very dramatic. And there's a lot of black and a lot of white in this picture. However, it looks a little faded to me, and that's okay. Maybe that's the intention, but my preference is to want to make it pop. So let's just mess with the contrast for a minute. Drop those highlights down. Maybe even more contrast. Let's drop the exposure down. Okay, and now we'll just lighten it so you can see her eye a little bit. Okay, so let's look at that. Just compare that with the original. And all I did was mess with the contrast and the shadows and the highlights a little bit. And that gives it a lot more drama, I think. So when zooming in here, it looks like there's a bunch of clone stamps back here. You don't notice it when it's zoomed out, but if you're going to clean up a background, there's two ways you can do it. One is try and shoot it in a way that you're eliminating the distracting element that way, or when you have to retouch it, make sure you go in and be meticulous about it. You don't want it to show up that you were obviously doctoring the picture. You want it to look natural and clean. So I would definitely say that. It looks like that's going on here. Maybe there was an old broken down car back there, or a tractor, some pigs running across the screen, something like that. Anyway, so I would say spend a little more time on the cleanup. Now, the feeling of this picture reminds me of an old infrared style photography. You could use film in your camera that actually was sensitive to infrared light, and because of that, warmer things would be lighter and cooler things would be darker. And that's what the tree and the sky look like to me. Not necessarily her because her body's dark, but in fact, let's go in and make her dress a little darker. We'll just take the blacks down, and we'll take the shadows down just a little bit. I want to still be able to see her eye, but right in there. That looks cool. So with the infrared feeling, it definitely doesn't feel like a warm picture. It feels like a cool picture. So I would tone it a little bit, maybe cool, just to see what it looks like. And we'll do that in the shadows on this one. So we'll take the shadow split toning over to a blue, and we'll raise that saturation. Ooh, I like that. So that gives it a really interesting quality. Another thing that I would do here is our favorite nifty little vignette trick. Go to the post crop vignette, and I would just darken the edges a bit to keep us in on this tree. All right, last thing to give us the infrared feel and to possibly eliminate some of the funky cloning background removal is we're going to go in and we're going to add some grain. We're going to make it look like an old film picture. Put in a bunch of grain over the top. Let's maybe do some more. Yeah, there we go. So if you look at it now, it makes it feel more like it was shot that way than doing it after the fact. So let's see. I think that's about everything. If you could just clean up that background, I really like this image. It's a lot of fun. Let's check out one more. Okay, very cool. Looks like an old burnt down forest from a forest fire. She's looks kind of like an angel or a fairy or something here. So compositionally, I like it. Generally, the rule is to put a subject on the thirds. So like this third of the image or this third, you know, but this looks cool like this. You can definitely break the rules. So it looks like she's walking down the hill kind of in, you know, coming from another world. I would say a couple things about this image. First of all, I really like it. It's very pretty and interesting. I want to know the stories behind these images. There's a lot of thematic things happening here, and they have drama to them. I just kind of want to know the story. I want to know what text, you know, what's happening here. But as far as the image itself, I like the composition. Probably wouldn't change too much there. The dress for me is a bit blown out. It's kind of like a big blob. There is detail there, so it's not the real problem. It's just I feel like it could look better. We'll go down, but not too far, maybe right in there. And then we'll do the same thing with her dress. We're going to grab this brush, and we'll do the same thing with her legs here. I don't know if I said that or not, but we'll just darken her legs a bit. And that's obviously way too dark, so we're going to lighten it up here. We'll pull those highlights back up until they look good. Oh, way too high. There we go, right in there. And then you can change the color so it matches the rest of the picture. We'll add a little bit of warmth and a little bit of magenta. There we go. So that looks good. So now it keeps your eye, I think, more up in here. Her face may have gotten a little dark, so we can actually use a brush to do the opposite. That's a nice thing about these brushes is you can just affect a small area of the picture and not have to you know, change the whole picture. In the old days in a darkroom, this was called dodging and burning. You would dodge the areas that you wanted to keep lighter, and you would burn the areas you wanted to make darker by using your hand or something in the enlarger to block the light or allow the light through. Anyway, that's very cool. She's got a little hair across her face. You could maybe take that out. So let's zoom back out here. Okay, and then with this image, we want to keep our eye in here, and you want to keep looking around here. My eye keeps going down to these bushes, which are interesting, but I don't necessarily want to see the bushes. I want to be looking at her and where she's coming from. Maybe she smoked this forest with her crazy powers or something a while back. All right, so let's make this brush bigger. You can see it up here. So make the brush bigger, and you can use the parentheses on your keyboard as a shortcut, and then we'll just kind of paint in this area, just kind of darken it a bit, and we'll darken this area. Kind of like these little bushes right there next to her. Those aren't too distracting. Come over here a little bit. All right, and then we'll drop our exposure a little bit and our highlights a little more, and then we'll just kind of turn them a little green again because they went a little gray. There we go. Okay, and then lastly, I would just go down and do a very slight vignette. The edges you can feel are just a little bit dark. We're going to use the post-crop vignette because it's really even the way it applies. Just a tiny bit right in there. You might not even be able to see that. But let's look at the original. Okay, so it's a little more stark, contrasty, less detail, and a little more compositionally distracting. And then it just tightens it up and we'll bring it right in there. Beautiful images. Beautiful images. Thank you, Sylvia, for submitting those for critique. It can be hard to do for a professional sometimes, but we appreciate it because we're all learning. I don't know everything, but I love to share what I do know. So please submit your images to john@cameralink.com and I'll critique them right here together with you. And remember to subscribe to Master Photography Now and put a comment down below with what you want to learn about. It could be about, you know, the latest gear coming out, or about how to grow your photography business, or even a photography how-to, like an on-location shoot. So let me know what you guys are interested in, and tell me also in the comments below what you would have done to these pictures, or if you didn't like something I did. I'm happy to hear that as well. So for Master Photography Now, this is Johnny K. We'll see you soon.